Hey everybody, Jordan here, back with another video for the Stoltz Fit YouTube channel. We're talking nutrition today. Last video was a little bit about training splits and kind of how I structure my own training. I'm going to talk today about diet because obviously nutrition is a very important piece of the puzzle, maybe the most important for health and longevity, and very, very important for your physique and bodybuilding type goals. This video is about clean eating or food quality, which is a better term for it, versus macro tracking, which I think is the wrong argument to begin with. And that's the first thing I want to talk about, is that it's not either or, it can both be beneficial at the same time. And which one should you put most of your energy on? Full transparency, I am a macro tracker. It's what I do for a living, is help people with nutrition and macros and calculating those numbers and adjusting them over time. It's something that I've done for a very long time and I've seen a lot of success with as far as body transformations are concerned. When I first started getting into this, I remember worrying way too much about clean foods, chicken breast, almonds, brown rice, all that kind of stuff. I remember eating almonds in the bathroom of my church because I needed to get a certain number of meals in per day and needed these high quality foods. At that moment, pretty much realized that was pretty dysfunctional and eventually found macro tracking, which completely changed my life and perspective as far as nutrition and health is concerned, to really realize that any food can fit in, just not every food can fit in to a balanced diet. However, through the years of working with a lot of people, I have really come to realize there's a balance between the two. It's not always about just if it fits your macros. It's not always about just is this food healthy or not. It is what foods will help you get to your goals and what are the goals you need to focus on for your actual numbers as well. Macro tracking does work because science, thermodynamics, calories in versus calories out is the key to the puzzle. If you're not losing weight, you're eating too many calories. If you are gaining weight too fast, you're eating too many calories. Everything comes down to this equation, and to fight against that is simply fighting against physics, essentially. However, nutritious food does make a big difference, especially in adherence and how you can actually hit those numbers. I'd go so far to say that food quality drives food quantity, or at least the behaviors associated with that. So I do recommend clean eating, for lack of a better term, for most people. And that's kind of actually the first step that I start people with when I coach them. Instead of just worrying about calories, protein, carbs, fat, fiber, we are focusing on whole, nutritious, unprocessed foods for the most part, for a lot of different reasons. Today, I'm going to go over those different reasons and why, if you're a beginner or even an advanced person in a strict cut, you should be focusing on whole nutritious foods, clean eating, so to say, over just macro counting. The first one is that motivation, I find, increases. And this is the same underlying reason that something like fasted AM cardio works so well. It's not that that is particularly magic. It's that choosing behaviors at the beginning of the day that make you feel like you're making the right decisions will kind of bleed into the rest of your day and create better decisions down the road when things get busier and more difficult. For example, if you wake up in the morning and go for a run, you're more likely to eat a nutritious breakfast, you're more likely to go to the gym later in the day, you're more likely to make healthy choices through the day, just because you're starting your day off on the right foot. If you start off your day eating a mixing bowl full of Cocoa Puffs and watching the news, you're probably bound to make worse decisions in that day for your health and fitness. The same goes for nutritious foods. If you are making choices in your food choices for breakfast, for example, that are like whole eggs, sourdough bread, fruit, yogurt, things that are very nutritious, that will probably lead you into choosing better food choices for lunch, snacks, even drinks throughout the day, dinner, desserts. It's going to all kind of snowball into better choices that will better support your goals. The biggest thing, though, that micronutrient dense foods or clean foods do is they keep you full. They satiate you. And that's why I typically start people out eating whole natural foods, because a lot of times, depending on someone's goals, they might not even have to macro track to make a lot of weight loss progress. Just eating more lean proteins, more vegetables, more fruits, more dairy if they can tolerate it well, even breads and grains, eating more of that and less processed foods, snacks, desserts, high calorie drinks, and things that are really easy to overeat. Just making those decisions and choices are going to, like I said before, drive them into the proper food quantity. When you base a meal around a big chicken breast or a big steak, a big pile of vegetables, a salad, maybe a little bit of starchy carbs on the side like a potato versus a bag of chips and a Subway sandwich, you are way more likely to stick to your calorie goals and your macro goals, even if you don't even know what those numbers are to begin with. It's driving you to the proper food quantity, and it makes dieting so much easier. My diet now compared to in college, for example, in college was a lot of trying to fit in different restaurant foods into my macros. It was fitting in cafeteria foods, snacks, treats, ice cream, all this stuff. And I was making progress, but not great progress. The best progress I've ever seen is when I started cooking 99% of my food at home using whole natural foods, because I know it's going into it, it's easier to track, and it's keeping me way more full and driving me towards the proper food quantity. Again, the macros matter, but what you eat helps you actually hit those macros. And I do think there is a lot of importance in the micronutrients and getting enough vitamins and minerals versus just popping a multivitamin. Getting different antioxidants, polyphenols, vitamins, minerals from your actual food does make a big difference in how you feel, the energy you have, how well you stay, how healthy you are over the long term. These things do matter, of course, and I do find it makes a difference. So when I'm focusing mainly on micronutrients, I make better choices in general and also feel better. And it might be a total placebo effect because of my first reason, like you're making better choices overall when you're eating nutritious foods. But I do think that does make a difference, and it definitely can't hurt to focus on micros as well. And I'll touch on a couple things I mentioned earlier, which are eating whole natural foods, clean eating, so to say, makes it much harder to overeat. You are driving the right quantity because you're eating filling foods, foods high in protein, foods high in fiber, things that are nutritious and that will fill you up because of their high volume. This makes it much harder to overeat versus something like a bag of Doritos. I could easily eat 2,000 calories of Sour Patch Kids if I had a big bag in front of me. It's a lot harder to eat 2,000 calories of sweet potatoes. Those are the kind of things I'm talking about. In addition to that, whole foods are way harder to mess up your tracking with. This is why I said it made such a big difference when I started cooking from home versus going out to eat more often, was because you're in way more control of what goes into it, butter, oils, things like that. And also the margin of error is much smaller. If you go to a restaurant and order a burrito, it's way harder to know the macros and calories in that burrito. That could mess up your day by 300, 400, 500 calories, which is your calorie deficit a lot of the times, versus messing up a little bit on the measurement of your broccoli or your salad at home. Definitely doesn't have as big of an effect. Accidentally tracking or tracking in your head 9 ounces of chicken instead of 7 definitely doesn't make that big of a difference in your overall progress, if any. And I think the most important things, especially for beginners, is that clean eating, so to say, which I hate that term, but the clean foods, the whole unprocessed foods, give you a good foundation in which to add more flexibility later. Once you are more experienced tracking macros in a different phase, maybe you've done the nutrition thing for a long time, basing most of your meals and cooking most of your meals around lean protein, vegetables, fruits, starchy carbs like rice and potatoes and pasta, builds those habits to where you're going to structure your meals like that in the future. So when you are creating your meal that you're estimating and you're not even tracking anymore down the road, you're going to gravitate towards a protein source, fruit or vegetables, and build around those whole foods versus something that's going to result in you probably overeating. A concept I like to use with clients is called earn your flexibility. This is something that I like to use with people because it does promote the things I just talked about as far as satiety, making good food choices, the motivation that kind of builds and snowballs, and driving you towards the right food quantities. When I start people out, or even myself, if I'm starting out in an aggressive cut and want to lose weight, I will keep my food list relatively short with not a lot of flexibility. It's going to be vegetables, fruit, 4 or 5 protein sources like eggs, chicken, beef, tuna, and maybe some starches like rice, pasta, potatoes. And that's pretty much it. Maybe I'll have some protein powder, maybe a little bit of yogurt or milk. And I'll keep that food list pretty short. My shopping will just include those things. I won't eat things that don't fit that food list. And this helps me stay on track, drives that motivation, drives the right food quantity, keeps me full. And for a beginner, helps them make those choices that are going to benefit them down the road. As you get more experienced, as you get into a different phase, even like a maintenance phase, a muscle building phase, feel free to add in more flexibility. My diet never looks the same in a muscle building phase day by day. Some days I'll have pizza, some days I'll have chicken and broccoli and rice, some days I'll have dessert, some days I'll have fruit. It really varies. And that's because I earned the flexibility in previous phases. You need to build with that short list and earn the flexibility for later phases and when you become more experienced in general. If it fits your macros does work, but the flexibility can sometimes hinder you if you are too flexible out of the gate. You're not going to be full, you're going to miss micronutrients, you're going to not promote good behaviors for the rest of your day, and it is way harder to stay accurate and consistent, which is the most important thing when you're talking fitness and nutrition. So hopefully that helps everybody. Remember, it's not either or, it's how can the two work synergistically to get you better progress. The holy grail is tracking your food quantity, macros, fiber, calories, keeping an eye on that, and also choosing nutrient-dense foods most of the time. If you want to pick either or, start out eating clean foods, quote unquote, build those habits, build that satiety, build that type of meal structure, and then add in more flexibility with IFYM later on in your journey.